I think a lot of the real discussion around it was centered around the fact that it was Vijay Singh
Hmm.
taking a spot away from a young player using his money exemption.
Yeah.
Ball don't lie, though.
Welcome to Center Cup. I'm Kyle Muserino with Nick Newmeyer and Will Neary. On today's show, we're moving quickly through the latest LIV news. Cam Smith fully committing, Bryson sounding less certain, Jon Rahm staying put, and notable movement with Pat Perez, Patrick Reed, and NCAA champ Michael Lasasso turning pro. We'll hit a quick TGL check-in, recap the Sony Open, Chris Gotterup's win, shifting conditions, and Vijay Singh's remarkable return before we head to Dubai, where Rory and Lowry stumbled late, Fleetwood's Friday hurt him, and Nacho Elvira capitalized for the win. And then we'll close it out by asking whether early season rust is showing from the game's elite and look ahead to the American Express this weekend. Let's get started. Will, what'd you think about some of the latest LIV news coming out?
Yeah, like you said, I think some of this we saw coming. Cam Smith committed to staying with LIV in a press conference. Bryson, like you said, a little less conviction, but I think the question with Bryson is really a money question rather than a return to the PGA Tour question. He's in contract negotiations, figuring that all out, and obviously we're seeing some pretty big dollar signs thrown around on what that might look like. Rahm also kept it pretty simple. I think he was quoted as saying, "I'm not planning on going anywhere," and that says about all of it. And yeah, like you said, some other interesting things did pop up. I'll touch on the Patrick Reed comment a little bit in an article with Golf Digest. I'll just quote him here. Reed said, "I mean, of course, if it were up to me, I'd play everywhere. I'm already playing on 3 tours. Why not add one more? I always enjoyed my time out there on the PGA Tour. Let's be honest, out there, it's the best tour in the world. Look at what they've done in golf. I could see myself playing there at some point again, but right now, you just never know. Everything is so fluid." And that was a great sign. I mean, following what we saw with Brooks Koepka, to have a guy of Patrick Reed's stature, a major champion, albeit obviously there are some character questions that have always floated around Patrick Reed's name. We don't need to get into all that right now, but it's good to see big names like, being like, yeah, if the door's open, I'm gonna walk through it. Obviously, that's great. That was unfortunately followed up by some less fortunate news. I don't know, Nick, if you want to jump in at all around what happened with Michael Lasasso over the past couple days.
Yeah, I think we saw over the last few weeks, everything with LIV was kind of progressing the way we thought it was going to. I'm personally not shocked that either of the three, Cam Smith, Bryson DeChambeau, Jon Rahm, I'm not shocked that none of them are publicly stating that they want to come back. I think the one thing we're never really going to know is what went down with Brooks Koepka and him breaching his contract and leaving immediately. I don't think we're ever going to know what he had to give up. So it doesn't shock me that any of these players aren't looking to breach their contract with a year left in it. But the thing with Patrick Reed I thought was really interesting. I think you're starting to see, or at least we were starting to see, the cracks starting to fall. Maybe some of the LIV players realizing that, hey, the grass isn't as green on this side. And that was until, boom, Michael Lasasso, 2025 NCAA individual champion, shocks the world by declining Augusta National and joining Phil Mickelson's High Flyers. I think that was kind of a shock. You definitely weren't expecting that. He was somebody that I was really looking forward to seeing on the tour and just seeing what he would be able to do. Tough look rejecting Augusta and not playing, forfeiting his Masters. Forfeiting his Masters exemption to go play pro. It's a tough look, but
I think that's what stood out to me. I mean, it's one I'm not necessarily surprised that, surface level, that somebody like Michael Lasasso might go to LIV, right? I mean, it's guaranteed money. You can make a lot and quickly, right? And in theory, especially now that we see potential doorways opening up back to the PGA Tour, it's an opportunity for these young guys to get a lot of money, and especially being on Phil Mickelson's team, I can see the appeal there. But I think what shocked me a lot was, like you said, the foregoing the opportunity to play at Augusta in the Masters as an amateur. I mean, that is like such a storied tradition, sleeping in the crow's nest. Like all aspects of that tradition are so important to, and such like an embodiment of the tradition of golf, I feel like, right? And what makes it important, why people love this sport, why this meritocracy is so important. So I think really for me, that was a point that stood out, that he would forego this, like literally the opportunity of a lifetime for a golfer, right? To play in the Masters, to to have this opportunity as an amateur. I think that spoke more to the decision, or that shocked me more, I guess, than the general decision for him to go.
And I think where I really want to harken this back to is Lasasso was up and coming. Like, he was going to be on the tour. I think it was it Michael Kim over the weekend talked about the meritocracy and how Michael Lasasso was going to have no issues competing on the tour, and he was definitely destined for greatness. I want to remember James Piot?
I remember the name.
So James Piot, 2021 U.S. Amateur Champion, All-American, All-Big Ten player at Michigan State. He wins the 2021 U.S. Amateur at Oakmont. Following May, signs with LIV, plays in the inaugural event in London. Thought he was going to bank on his success, was going to make all this money. Relegated at the end of the 2023 season. Didn't do anything on LIV, and he's played occasionally on the Asian Tour, but that's it really. Like, and that's so he achieved all this amateur status in the lead up, but then once he cashed in, there was really nowhere for him to go. He was just playing, I don't want to say mindless golf, but to me that seems like where Michael Lasasso is destined for, and it's going to be unless there's some big, I don't know, merger,
right?
I think he would have been better off staying on the tour and banking on him. I think he would have made more money staying on the tour than.
Yeah, the unfortunate question, and not to play LIV advocate here because that's not the role I tend to see myself in, but the unfortunate question that we'll never know the answer to is if guys like that, if their performance on LIV is directly related to LIV or if it would have happened otherwise, right? Because if in theory he stays on the PGA Tour and his performance goes the same way, he makes less money than he would have than he did going to LIV, or at least I would assume. Again, all these like dollars are question marks really, but presumably that's the case. That if he goes to LIV and plays poorly, he's going to make more money than if he stayed at the PGA Tour and played at the same level. But I agree. I generally agree. I think that going to LIV, even on the team with Phil Mickelson, is not necessarily conducive to bettering your game, right? I don't think that's the message that it sends, especially foregoing an amateur status appearance at the Masters. I don't think that sends the message that you're really striving to better yourself and better your game, but unfortunately.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's great for LIV. Like, it's an immediate response to everything that's been going on tour, and I think that it's what I was looking for them to do. I really didn't think they were going to go quietly, and so I think this was a perfect kind of bounce back, and I'm excited to see what happens with this. I think I'll still be keeping an eye on Michael Lasasso, and I think that'll be interesting to see him develop still.
So I guess a question would be, do you guys think this is more of something that could possibly be coming up for LIV in the wake of Brooks coming back? Are they going to try and get more guys like this, more young up-and-comer guys that they can grow with LIV and maybe buck some of the stuff that Will is talking about of a lack of game? Or do you think this was just a one-off?
I could see this being more of a one-off. I think the more people talk and the more you see people like Patrick Reed kind of talking about the status of the tour, I think it would be hard to sign on to something. Like, you don't get on the Titanic after it hit the iceberg, right? Like, I think it's going to be hard to convince people to get back on the ship. And I think this was a good step. But like I said, right now, everything with Michael Lasasso is what could have been, right? Like, what will be, I guess, but there's no previous success outside of his collegiate years, but there's really nothing to draw on to say, like, that's our guy. They're all just like, banking on the future.
I think, frankly, it sort of depends on how. Well, first of all, I think this is how LIV should approach these situations. I think these are the guys that LIV should target if they want to find themselves as I'm not arguing they will ever be a viable alternative in terms of competition to the PGA Tour, but if they want to have any legitimacy, this is the kind of guy they need to target at this point. Mm-hmm. But I also think it depends how they're advertising themselves in these negotiations. Like, I think if they're walking in there and if they're walking into a negotiation with people of Michael Lasasso's amateur status, amateur abilities, who are clearly very promising golfers but aren't necessarily there yet, If they're walking into those negotiations and advertising themselves as an alternative to the PGA Tour and as a theoretically competitive golf tour, I think they're not going to see much success, because I think at this point people know that they're not. I think it's clear that this is not where people go to be the best golfers they can be. I don't think that's a question anymore. But if they walk into those negotiations and instead advertise themselves as an opportunity to make a lot of guaranteed money, and look, if you go over there and you take it seriously and you decide, I'm going to put my nose to the grindstone and try to get better at golf, I don't see why you couldn't do that theoretically. So I think it sort of depends on the approach that LIV takes, because I think they should start to advertise themselves as more of, not a stepping stone, obviously, because who knows what I think the problem is the wishy-washy nature of how you get back to the PGA Tour right now. We've seen it with four guys. Patrick Reed wants to, and what we've seen from the PGA Tour in the last month or so is that they are willing to find ways to get guys back if they deem it worth it. So it's unclear, but I think the success that LIV might find would be in finding these guys like Michael Asasso and pitching themselves more as an opportunity to make a lot of guaranteed money when you're young.
I'm going to challenge that, actually, because I think the core essence of LIV is disruption. It always has been. It's been creating reasons to turn your TV away from Golf Channel and away from the PGA Tour to watch LIV. And to me, I'm going to be completely honest. Like, I do follow the collegiate game. Hell, I work in collegiate sports, but I obviously I'm aware of who Michael Asasso is. I'm aware of his game, but other than that, like, it doesn't really faze me because that him going to LIV, because I'm not going to miss him on the PGA Tour because I haven't seen him on the PGA Tour.
Yeah.
And so to me, there's no real draw to watch Michael Asasso, because unless you're a golf savant and have been following his journey for the last few years, you don't know who he is. Mm-hmm. And so that, I think that's where I think they almost pulled him too early. And so you're not going to get this giant Michael Asasso fan base going to LIV.
That's definitely true. I think the reality is that. I think you're right. I think the question for me is more like, how does LIV want to continue to brand themselves? Broadly speaking, I don't think they'll go down the road I advertise. I think they're too, I don't know, confident's the wrong word, but they're too self-confident for that. I think they're not going to target the smaller amateur. Unfortunately, that's not like the mindset they're in, I don't think. And like you said, they've always been about disruption, and they probably in all likelihood will continue to be. I think the only way I ever see myself enjoying LIV to any degree or watching LIV is if they manage to do this consistently. If they get a lot of younger talent over there and it becomes not a Korn Ferry tour, but a type of amateur tour that a lot of these bigger names are going to. But again, I don't realistically think that's going to happen. I just think that's a potential road to me being like, you know what, maybe there's some legitimacy here. But
well, for LIV, it's exactly what you guys have talked about. It's disruptive. They're able to put on the headline, we have an NCAA individual champion foregoing his amateur status, skipping the Masters to join us with LIV. That's exactly what they want.
Absolutely. And I mean, the interesting thing now, like not to shift gears too heavily, but with what Rory said in an interview with ESPN this morning, it seems like even in the wake of Bryson returning and these opportunities for a very select few players to come back, the actual theoretical merger between LIV and PGA Tour, it seems, according to Rory at least, to be getting farther away. Again, to quote him, he said, "I just don't see a world where it can happen at this point. Like, for reunification to happen, every side is going to feel like they will have lost, where you really want every side to feel like they have won. I think they're just too far apart for that to happen now." And like you said, I think these types of signings are exactly what LIV wants, and they're also the exact reason why this unification is just seemingly getting farther and farther away.
I think there was hope for unification when I think the idea of the merger first started going around in, what was that, 2023? Mm-hmm. Can you believe it's been almost 3 years now since we've been talking about a merger? Yeah. And there was hope at first, but I think there just wasn't really, like, LIV doubled down, the PGA doubled down. Like, I feel like both sides, I think Rory is spot on. I think both sides just kept pushing further apart to now there's really no incentive for either side to even pursue a merger at this point.
It's just who can you poach at this point is all it is.
So. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's the LIV news. We'll keep track of all that. It's ever evolving, and I'm sure we'll have more news on that next week. Next on the docket, TGL Tuesday.
Yeah.
I'd say the biggest takeaway was that Justin Rose Albatross. That was probably the greatest thing we saw last night. Will, what'd you think?
Man, let's get to the real alternative tour to the PGA. The TGL, the Tomorrow Golf League. I had fun. The more I watch this, I'm like, you know what? I'm having a good time. Very much in the antithesis of what I was saying about Liv. I think TGL knows what it is. They're hitting massive fades around an apocalyptic bridge onto a par 3 green. They're hitting stingers under a 30-foot rock. And this is what I want to see. If I'm tuning into this kind of thing, I want to see Akshay hit a slinging cut low driver at like 1 degree launch angle.
Totally.
330 yards down the center of the fairway after Colin hits I think it was a 3-iron at another 1 degree launch angle. Like, that's the kind of thing I want to see out of this. And I had fun. It's fun to see Tiger out there, man. I know we talked about this last week. He's got a weird Tiger Woods hammer problem. I mean, that man,
hammer obsession.
They're like taking it. His teammates are taking it away from him. They're like, dude, he's like. Every time they interview him, he's like, man, I'd throw it every single hole.
Yeah. Oh, he's abusing his power. He knows nobody's telling him no.
That competitive spirit is.
It doesn't go away.
Yeah,
man.
you won't take that away from him. You can't take it away.
It does not. And look, I'm not gonna take away much in terms of how good these guys are playing and how that translates to the PGA Tour. I know there was some. They do make some comments on the air. Like last night, they're talking about how. Chris Goddard says that it's something that helps him get him in shape. So when he comes out and plays on the PGA Tour in this opening week at the Sony, which he won, which we'll get to, he feels like this isn't the first time he's swinging golf club. It doesn't feel as alien to him when he comes back for that first tournament. I'm happy he says that. That's great. I'm not personally going to be extrapolating performance on TGL to how I think people are going to perform in real life. That being said, Max Homa might be a sleeper this week, but whatever. But no, man, look, Justin Rose hitting a driver to I think it was like a 5-iron albatross. It's awesome. It's fun. The crowd's going wild. There's music. They've got the shot clock and stuff. It's a fun Tuesday night on the TV while I'm not necessarily watching with full intent, I think, and that's what it's supposed to be.
And I think it showcases, you have the interviews, you have everybody's mic'd up. It showcases the personalities more. And I feel like that's kind of, not to draw back to this, but I feel like that's where Liv kind of falls through, is that you're just watching a bunch of people playing for money. You're not really seeing. You see, like on the tour, you have something like Full Swing, which I'm in the middle. I just started season 2. I've been back on the binge.
Thank God.
You see people like Joel Damon,
Yep.
like someone that isn't making headlines on tour. Arguably hasn't made headlines in a while, but also you see his personality and you see. Just that inside look to him where you're not just in between the ropes and just seeing them like locked in. And that makes it more appealing.
100%. I think when learning about like his relationship with his caddy was one of the better episodes, better takeaways I had from watching Full Swing is like just seeing the inner workings of these relationships. It's a cool thing that you don't see a lot of on TV. And I think you're right. That is like kind of where TGL to some degree succeeds, is getting these interviews, getting these like personalities. You get a little bit more of that.
Well, I also think it's, I don't think it's necessarily for us or for the rabid golf fan. I think if you're thinking about it in terms of maybe a 10-year-old kid who's watching and maybe isn't going to be watching a tournament and regular golf might be boring, this is something that might hook a new generation. 100%. And like you were talking about, Nick, you get to see these players' personalities more, and maybe you fall in love with a Max Homa or a Justin Rose, or you see something happen on TGL, and you're more inclined to then watch a normal tournament. Maybe you get into it that way. And, maybe they're just trying to appeal to a new demographic, and I think you're totally right. It knows what it is. It's not trying to be anything that it's not, and I think it's fun.
Yeah, and look, now they're expanding into the WTGL where the women are going to play, and they came out with the first 5 names that are going to be a part of that roster, including Gino Titakun, who is the world golf rank number 1. She was the money leader on the LPGA in 24 and 25. They got Charlie Hull, Lydia Ko, Brooke Henderson, Lexi Thompson, like big names in the LPGA space that are like really important to be capturing for something like the TGL to be successful. The same way they have Rory, they have Tiger's not playing, unfortunately, but he's there and he's on the mic and he's talking the whole time. And Brooke Henderson was at the match last night between Jupiter Links and LAGC, which I don't even know if I mentioned that was the match that happened, but it was fun. Jupiter Links continues to be really bad, but they almost won this one. They sort of.
Have they even won?
No,
at
they
all
have
yet?
not. They have not won once. Even my Boston Common Golf boys have managed to squeak one out. But Brooke Henderson was there, and she was talking about how excited she was to be a part of it and how cool this kind of experience was. And I think it's great, man. I'm like, again, not something I'm going to translate to the PGA Tour and necessarily like evaluate golfers through, but it's a great way to enjoy a Monday night, a Tuesday night, and watch a little golf on a big screen and watch these guys hit really cool shots. And I think that's what this should be about.
Yeah, I think especially you mentioned the Apocalypse hole, and I think that
That was awesome.
Yeah.
that's what I want to see out of this. Is like, I think the first season they were playing like actual golf, they're playing actual holes, and that's where I kind of started to get a little bored. Where it's
Yeah.
like each team having like their team specific hole or like the stinger hole, the Apocalypse.
Yeah.
Like, take account of the fact that you're playing on a computer
Yeah.
and just make it as far-fetched as you
Yeah.
want, and you're going to succeed.
And we saw some of the holes they have where like you said, that first season they tried to do like something interesting, but the way they do it interesting is make it just really tight at around 300 yards. And it's like, cool, but unfortunately these guys can hit at 320. So you don't see the shot shape. I think the shot shape, the interesting different ways these guys have to control ball flights is what's going to make this cool. And I think they're starting to figure that out. So I'm not saying I'm going to tune in every single time it's on TV, but I'm excited to watch when it is. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
it's a good time.
Well, let's get into the real golf that happened over the weekend, the Sony Open. What were some of our big takeaways?
Weather-wise, I thought it was a fairly interesting tournament. I think we expected it to be a little bit more reliant on conditions than it necessarily was. The dog legs of the course did not play as much of a role early in the week, simply because the fairways were a little softer. There wasn't as much wind, which allows you to carry some of the distance you might otherwise not be able to carry with hard fairways. Your ball obviously might run through the dog leg at an angle there. But it was interesting, which I think led to some of the lower scores we saw on Thursday. We saw a couple guys at -8, I think around 9 players at 6 under or better. But then we saw the leaders kind of stagnate and a little bit of a cluster at the top there. I think there was a bunch of players at 9, maybe 5 players at 9 under by the end of round 2, and it reached 12 by the end of round 3. But it was nice to see after a couple guys got off to really hot starts, and we saw a couple 62s land on Thursday. It was good to see some of that not run away from the field, have this field kind of catch up to them, the leaders stay where they were. And then it made for a fairly interesting tournament. I don't think there was a ton of drama, especially coming down the stretch. I mean, round 3, Davis Riley held the lead at 12 under with Chris Gotterup. Kevin Roy and Harry Hall. Chris Gotterup, Kevin Roy, and Harry Hall all trailed at 10 under. And it looked like Riley might have it for a while. When they had gotten through 5, when Riley was through 5, he was at 14 under with Gotterup at 11, but then Gotterup birdied 2, and I think Riley went 4 over in the next 3 holes and pretty much threw himself out of that tournament. And from there, it was sort of Gotterup's to lose, and he didn't. So, it was interesting. I liked what I saw to Gotterup. I don't know, Nick, Kyle, do you guys have any other major takeaways?
It was nice to see the boys on TV playing
was.
golf.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like after that break, it was just really good to see golf on the TV again, and it was. It's the Sony Open. Like, it's not gonna knock your socks off every year, but I think it definitely was a bit more entertaining seeing the course like firm up a little bit as the week went on, and yeah. Other than that,
Yeah, I mean, look, like you said, it was also championship weekend, and I'm a Patriots fan, and I know you're a Bears fan, so there was some other stuff going on Sunday on my big TV, but the laptop was aptly tuned into the Sony Open, and it was fun. Like you said, it's great to have something to follow for golf again, have like a real tournament going on. Remind myself, I watched a good bit on Thursday and Friday. Actually, I had some time. I was able to tune in as much as I liked, to be honest, and it was fun to watch the guys hit some good shots. I mean, like Nick Taylor got out to a good start. I think I was texting both of you like, hey guys, maybe we should have just picked the guy who won last year to do it again. Maybe this isn't as hard as we're making it out to be. But then, he went 1 under the next day and sort of fell away from the top couple of the leaderboard there. Although I think he still had a great finish. But yeah, one takeaway I had, or at least not a takeaway necessarily, but I had a ton of fun watching VJ, 62 years old out there.
Story of the tournament for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, we all know his story to some degree. I'm not going to go in too deep, but it was fun for me to learn a little bit more about him through this stuff. It was a fun deep dive as somebody I'm 26 years old, and we're all kind of in that 24, 25 to around 30, And so I personally didn't necessarily watch a lot of VJ growing up because I was 3. So, not necessarily my fault, I don't think. But it was cool for me to jump back in and see, at least from a data perspective and narrative perspective, how successful he was. Because, you hear Tiger Woods, rightfully so, you hear so much about the greatest golfer of all time, in my opinion. But it's fun to see this stretch that VJ had in 2000 to 2005, like a maintained stretch while Tiger was at his peak and he was playing lights out. And I think I saw a stat that he made like 80% of cuts on tour, or not necessarily on tour, but 80% of cuts over his career, which is an outrageous number. So I had fun doing a little VJ research while the Saturday and Sunday rounds were going off. Obviously, he didn't break any records. He finished at 5 under T40, but didn't shoot an over par round, played clean golf, lumbered down those fairways, walked the whole thing, and it was really cool to see, a legend of the game of the early 2000s that isn't Tiger kind of take a little bit of spotlight. I thought that was fun.
Yeah, I think he made some headlines earlier in the week by using the money list exemption. Yes. Obviously, VJ Singh, not the most popular person on tour during his run. There's some, not going to get into that, but I think a lot of the real discussion around it was centered around the fact that it was VJ Singh taking a spot away from a young player using his money exemption. Yeah. Ball don't lie, though.
I know. It's one thing if he comes out there and he's dead last shooting 7 over, then I'm like, you know what? Yeah, give it to the kids. But and like he said, he came out today. Obviously, it was a little bit unclear on like how much he was going to be participating in the PGA Tour versus the Champions Tour. He came out today and said that he has no plans of being fully committed to the PGA Tour, and he will be playing a full season on the Champions Tour as well. So he'll only be on the PGA Tour sparingly. So I don't think him taking somebody's spot narrative is going to be something that threatens this season, consistently. But I do think it was fun to see, and I'm sure he'll have a lot of success on the Champions Tour this year. And like you said, the money list exemption is something that I kind of had forgotten about. I don't think, maybe we see guys take advantage of it occasionally, but I can't remember the last time this was a real storyline that somebody was. For those who don't know, the money list exemption is that so he made $71 million in on-course earnings throughout his career, which was 6th, by the way, which is kind of crazy, behind only Tiger, Rory, Scotty, Justin Rose, and Jim Furyk. And obviously now the purses are much larger than they were in between 2000 and 2005. Obviously, VJ played a lot in the 90s as well, but so there's a money list exemption that allows him to pick a year basically and have status on the PGA Tour for any year that he chooses because he's in the top 50 all-time earners. So yeah, he can regain full membership. So it was interesting to see somebody take advantage of that and come out and play. Like I said, he's made it clear that this isn't going to be a week-to-week thing for him. He talked a little bit about the commitment that the PGA Tour requires compared to the Champions Tour. But it was fun. Look, like you said, ball don't lie. He got out there, he made the cut, T40, 62 years old. Good for him. Great for him.
If you're mad at the fact that he's using an exemption to play on the tour, you go win 19 wins then. Yeah. Go have the career that VJ Singh did, and then you could decide how he wants to spend the rest of his life. 'Cause I think, do I agree with the money list? Do I agree with the exemption in the first place? Probably not. But it's here. He's not breaking. He's well within his rights. He's well within the rules to do that. And I think he's absolutely free to if he wants to. And he did very well with it. So I was very happy. He was someone that I had my eye on entering this week. And I think he did the maximum with the opportunity.
Yeah. And before we get off VJ Singh, I know you guys might get tired of my data ramblings, but I do have one that I want to bring up a little bit. Just because I was doing a little research, kind of reminding myself as somebody who didn't get to watch VJ Singh how talented he was, and how, again, I know there's questions about how his character in terms of some of the things that happened in the past and longer stories than we might have time for today. But just purely in terms of talent, I was looking at his 2003 to 2004 season, which was 2 full seasons. And he played 60 PGA Tour events, including majors. He had 13 wins, which was 22% of those events. He had 27 top fives, 45% of the events he played, and top 10 in 62% of the events he played in those 2 seasons. And just to compare that to Tiger, who again was very talented, playing or was like at one of the peaks of his career, or at least at one of the very high levels of his career. Over that period, played only 36 tournaments, so was played more sparingly, but only had 5 wins in 14% of his tournaments. One was top 5 and 50%, and top 10 and 70%. So like comparable numbers for VJ at the height of his powers and Tiger near the height of his powers. I'm not by any means trying to say that VJ is comparable to Tiger Woods, but it was cool for me to look back at those numbers and kind of quantify just how incredible that stretch run was. And it wasn't just 2003 to 4. 2001, 2005, he won the Masters before even that stretch began. So he was a really talented and continues to be a really talented player. So that was a fun little side quest for me to dive into some of that data.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. For someone who's a little bit older than you guys, in the early 2000s, obviously Tiger was in a league of his own, but in that tier under him, VJ was definitely one of those guys. Yeah. So I think it was cool to see him play and to see him play well. So that was definitely cool. Shall we move on to what happened in Dubai?
Yeah, and I don't want to spend too much time here, but it is worth mentioning just because of the way it finished, I think. So Rory, Lowry, and Fleetwood were really the big names that were out there in Dubai at the Dubai Invitational. We're just looking at the final round. Rory made a couple bogeys early, but then made 5 birdies in a row to get to 9 under, and he entered the 18th hole at 9 under. And so Rory and Lowry were kind of battling at the top of the leaderboard up there. Lowry was at 10 under, but so Rory made these had a chance to win. He entered the hole at 9 under, won back from Shane Lowry. And he had birdied 18 earlier in this week, which was playing over par on average on Sunday. And his tee ball went into the trees, and he kind of lost his opportunity. He ended up bogeying the hole, lost his opportunity to win there. So it was a shame to see Rory do that. But then, I like watching the guys I consider really talented out there. So you watch Lowry coming up the 18th, and he stripes it. He's at 10 under with a 1-shot lead, stripes it down the center of the fairway, and you're like, all right, man, like, all systems go. Like, let's just make our clean par, and we got a good chance at a win here. He puts it long into a bunker that Rory had just been in, and then goes from bunker to water to drop to double bogey to finish at 8 under with Rory, and effectively with a couple other guys that were in contention at around 9 under, take himself a little bit out of contention just because there was some guys that you're not going to have all those guys make bogeys, unfortunately. And then, like you said, I think early on, Kyle, like Nacho Elvira took advantage of that, and he birdied 17 to get to 10 under, made his routine par on the 72nd hole, tapped it in, as you might expect somebody like Shane Lowry or Rory to do, and won it at 10 under. Fleetwood, like I said, was out there, but shot a 78 on Friday, birdie free, which is a rarity on tours like this to go birdie free. Not
never done
free,
that.
Birdie free. A 78, 7 over on Friday, kind of. He played all right outside of that, but shot himself out of the tournament, unfortunately, which I think was a weird result for me. I mean, it's one thing if you've got one guy up there and they kind of fade, like if only Rory does that or only Lowry does that, or only, I guess Fleetwood's is different because he played himself out of it on Friday, but to see both of those guys kind of choke down the stretch a little bit was a bit of an odd feeling, especially considering the competition they were going up against, which nothing against the guys that are out there. There's a lot of I know David Puig was out there. There's a lot of really good players out there. But to see people of Rory and Lowry and Fleetwood's caliber kind of take themselves out of it was, it raised a couple questions about what the rust on these players coming into new seasons is like, and the opportunity that provides some of the guys that we might not otherwise expect.
I think we do this every year. Like we see players that maybe they don't start out as hot, maybe they don't, golf famous for happening exactly how it's supposed to happen, right?
Always.
Like remember a few years back, Colin Morikawa was leading comfortably at Kapalua, blew up on the back 9 and ended up losing the tournament. So I don't think you're going to get, like, if Scottie Scheffler is the number 1 golfer in the world, he's not going to win every single tournament just because he's the number 1 player in the world. You're going to see players like Nacho Elvira win, and you're going to see other players outside of who's potentially in your top 20. I think that's just what's going to happen. Like, it's not a guarantee that you're going to have the best player win every single week. And I think that's what makes golf really special in that regard.
Yeah, I think what I found interesting purely about this, and the only reason I'm not saying I'm worried about it, but I'm thinking about it. The only reason I think I'm thinking about some of this rust is just the especially in Dubai, the way that they faded. Especially Rory and Lowry. It wasn't a gradual fade. It wasn't like, okay, we're gonna shoot a couple under and just miss it by a couple shots and not really have ourselves at the top of the leaderboard. It was like, no, we've got it. Rory made his signature Rory McIlroy 5 birdies in a row between holes 9 and 13 to get right back in this thing. And then kind of just lost it, I mean, he didn't play terribly. It was really just that 18th hole tee ball that took him out of it and then went into the back bunker and lost it. But I was a little bit like, and again, like we, at the Sony, at least, to relate this back to the Sony a little bit, again, this is early season, so you don't have Scotty out there. You don't have a ton of guys, but you have a couple guys in the top 25 out there. Russell Henley, Bobby McIntyre, Ben Griffin. They all were T20. That's 3 of the top 10 guys in OWGR. They finished T20 and 7 shots back. Matsuyama was the other guy in the top 25 of the OWGR at 16, and he was the only one of those players that was inside the top 20 going into Sunday. Obviously, Bobby McIntyre shot a 63, which was the solo low on the day on Sunday, and finished T4, but he wasn't in contention for the win out there. But to be fair, Chris Goddard was a great golfer. He's right around there, around 25 in the world, and I think that's fair. But I was a little surprised just to see that none of those guys were really threats at the Sony. And obviously in Dubai, the guys were threats, but then faded.
I'll raise you one better. If you think Tommy Fleetwood's birdie free round was impressive, how about Brian Harman, 7 bogeys in a row?
That's hard to do. That's something, I don't know if I could even do that.
That was impressive.
I'd throw a double in there, but I mean, 7 clean bogeys in a row is hard to do.
And you would watch him chip. There were a few holes where he was on the green with his third. Like maybe he could chip it close for a par. It was truly just demoralizing to watch. You saw he was just truly defeated, and he was greenside with the chip. He had a great look to get up and down for a par, and you could just see in his eyes that he knew he was not making par.
Yeah,
and that would, to me, we often talk about like the Rory blow-ups, like the historic. To me, that was more spectacular to watch, and I think you're not going to see that a lot.
Yeah, well, you don't see a lot of bogey trains. You don't see a lot of. I mean, these guys, like, the whole reason, or not the whole reason. One of the reasons they're so great at this game is because they have the mentality to get off the bogey train. They're not going to make 7 bogeys in a row the way like some of us hacks who go out and play golf. Like if I make a double bogey, I'm probably making another one. Like just the way it's hard to rebound. But with these guys, they're so good at it. You almost never expect it, like you said, to see him on the green and just like be like, yeah, dude, he's not getting this up and down. Like he's not going to get this one close enough, and he's not going to make that 8-footer for par. Like he's just not. So again, I'm not extrapolating anything from his 7 bogey stretch, but like, yeah, I mean, it was fairly spectacular, that performance.
Yeah, I think to tie it back to what you're saying, I think you're not going to see the best players win every week from a statistical standpoint, and I think that's truly what makes golf special. You're going to see the Chris Goddard-ups, you're going to see the Nick Taylors, you're going to see people that maybe were on the outside looking in heading into the week, but they're gonna. It's truly like taking it back to VJ. It's truly ball don't lie.
Yeah.
Like the best player the best player in the field that week is who has the lowest score after 72 holes.
Yep.
And
God, so wise.
you don't know it until you play the 72nd.
It's true.
Truer statements
It
never
is.
been said.
Put it on a magnet, slap it on the bumper. Like,
Exactly.
Okay, so after those recaps, first couple tournaments, felt good to watch some real golf, felt good to digest some of these. We've got some stats now moving forward and some things to think about as we really ramp up and get into the season. So with that, maybe we can look back on some of our follow-through picks and give a little update and see how we did, how well we didn't do in my case, and kind of touch on some of those guys.
Yeah, so for those who maybe weren't listening to our first pod, which you should go listen, the follow through is something we're doing every week where we've picked 2 guys who we are going to follow throughout the season and provide, once a week we'll have a kind of segment like this that I imagine will get a little bit larger as we get into some real news happening, real tournaments going on, and all of our guys playing also. But So we're just providing a little bit of an update. So my guys were Cam Young and Daniel Berger. Cam Young, I don't have a ton. I mean, look, he played at TGL. I thought it was funny. He played at TGL last Tuesday. I thought it was funny when I was kind of looking into, obviously he didn't play at the Sony, and I was curious, like, I wonder if there's any massive reason or he just doesn't want to fly out there. And Google's AI overview, which is notoriously reliable, said that regarding him not playing the Sony Open, that his focus at the time was participating in the TGL Tomorrow Golf League events.
Gotta respect
And
it.
it was, I hope that's true, because I want him paying more attention to that than the PGA Tour. It's way more important to me that he succeed at TGL than he does. No, again, he's also not playing the MX, which is kind of a bummer. I wish I had more exciting things to say. He looked great at TGL. Again, I'm not extrapolating, so fantastic.
Unfortunately, TGL not going to the follow-through picks.
No points allotted.
No fantasy golf points.
No, sadly. And then my other guy was Daniel Berger, who actually, was a fun follow this week. Played really well. Obviously, the storylines around Daniel Berger were going into this season some injury issues. Obviously, there was significant injury issues earlier in his career, and then towards the end of last year, he suffered another injury, a finger injury. I believe he didn't hit balls for like 3 months before coming back, and played great. Finished T6 at 11 under at the Sony Open, 5 off the pace of Goddard, I think. And it was really consistent. 66, 70, 69, 64, no rounds over par, gained shots on the field every single round. He wasn't flashy, really, around the greens. I think that was kind of the one area where, looking at his strokes gain profile at the Sony and watching him play, obviously it looked like, just around the greens wasn't a consistent facet of his game. He was a little bit erratic in putting, and his approach game. But on Sunday, he put together his best round. He shot a 64, which was one off the 63 that Bobby McIntyre shot. So I was impressed. I'm looking forward to him continuing this. It's definitely promising signs going into the Amex, going into the rest of the season for what Daniel Berger can achieve. Look, I think he's proven in his past that he's one of those guys that when he's playing at his peak, he's competitive and will be near the top of leaderboards. And I hope he can kind of translate that to some bigger tournaments this year, some majors, see what he can do. But for now, I'm happy my guy's out there playing good golf and playing consistent golf. It was a fun tournament to watch for Berger.
For sure. Yeah. Taking it to my train now. Another one, Ludwig Gobert, did not play at the Sony. He'll be in the field this week at the Amex. It's his first time playing the event in the past 5 years. Mm-hmm. So I'm interested to see what he does. I think he finished the year strong. He had the T7 at the BMW, T9 at the FedEx, St. Jude.
Yeah.
So there's some room to improve. Around the green, he loses strokes. He loses, God, I'm going to hate myself for this. He loses .067 strokes. Yeah.
Brutal.
And so really, yeah,
Don't. Sorry to all of our listeners that had to endure that right now. That was horrible.
Just throw in some cheesy fart noise sound effect and just truly encapsulate it. But yeah, loses strokes around the green. I think, as we said, it'll be his first tournament of the year. I'm interested to see what he does. I think he could be maybe a sleeper pick, a bit of a long shot, but I'm excited to see what he could do this week. That brings us back to the Sony. We were talking a lot about Vijay Singh and not firing an over par round for the entirety of the weekend. And I think that's great. But I think, why would we be talking about the past when we could talk about the present and, more importantly, the future? Jordan Spieth at 7 under par, 3 straight rounds of 68, 69 the final round, finishes T24 in his first tournament of the year. I'm so fired up, guys.
Showing.
Talk about consistency, man. 68, 68, 68, 69. I thought Daniel Berger was out there consistent. That's pretty incredible work.
I think, obviously I said last week I was expecting T35. I didn't really have a lot of expectations. I just wanted to see consistency. And just, as you said, it's about as consistent as you can get. And I think there were definitely some times where you would see he was still fighting himself a little bit, would flare the irons every now and then. I think if you look at the side-by-side of his swing from last year versus this year, you can see his hands are in a completely different position. It looks a lot more like where he was in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And I think where I was really happy with was specifically in round 3. He gained almost 3 strokes solely on the putting green. And I think,
Are we back?
you know what? They were saying on the broadcast that when he put himself in a bad position off the tee and he was, closed off, he was looking to make a very difficult bogey. But they didn't take into account that it was Mr. Jordan Spieth sinking 40-foot putts to save par instead of making bogey.
God, we're so back.
We are so incredibly back, and I'm just so excited to see what he can do the rest of the season. I think a win is not off the table at some point this season, and I don't think the President's Cup is off the table either. I definitely think that's more of my realistic goals this year. I want to see a win and the President's Cup.
Love it.
It's definitely encouraging coming from Spieth, and it was fun to watch. It was cool to watch him out there playing well, for sure. So for my guys, we already talked about him a little bit. Tommy Fleetwood, just a rough Friday. 69, 78 on Friday, then came back and had a good bounce back weekend. Shot a 66 and a 71. Whatever, I'm not putting too much stock into it. We'll see how he goes coming through. My other guy, Neil Shipley, not even worse than that, and that one I'm wondering a little bit about that pick. He shot a 76 on Thursday, a 72 on Friday. Look at his data golf page; it's all red. It was not a good showing, but I'm still believing he's playing in the Amex this week, so we'll see how it goes. He's also going to be featured in the Life franchise, which is kind of a all-access look at some of these guys, and Shipley's going to be one of the guys on PGA Tour. So that'll be cool to see. Whether that helps him in my picks, that will be determined. Okay, let's jump into a preview of the American Express. Sepp Straka is the defending champ there. What are some of the things you guys are looking at as we look ahead to this tourney?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting tournament. Well, the only tournament on the PGA Tour that uses 3 courses. Players obviously rotate among the 3 courses Thursday through Saturday and then finish on the Pete Dye Stadium course on Sunday. The other courses are the La Quinta Country Club and the Nicklaus Tournament course. A couple interesting storylines, Blades Brown. This is just a fun little tidbit you've probably seen on social media by now, but he played in the Bahamas on the Korn Ferry Tour Sunday through Wednesday, made the cut, played all 4 days, and now is going to trek up to California from the Bahamas on Wednesday trying to play the Amex, and ideally, theoretically, makes the cut. 8 consecutive days of tournament golf. Got to kick your butt a little bit.
That'd be impressive.
Yeah. But that's a fun little somebody to watch, Obviously, one of the lower scoring tournaments on the PGA Tour. I think in the last 7 tournaments, the average winning score was 26 under, which is pretty remarkable. I know. It's well below the average. And then Scotty Scheffler makes his debut here this year, and as you might expect, he is a massive favorite. It is a little ridiculous, even though he doesn't necessarily have the best course history here. I think in the past 4 tournaments, he was cut T25, T11, T17, and before that he was 3rd, to be fair, to his credit. In 2020, he was 3rd. But to have him, I think he's plus 260 at the moment. The next closest is Ben Griffin at plus 2,000. So he is, maybe I'm doing my math a little bit wrong here, but it actually looks like Scotty's moved up a little bit to plus 290. He was previously plus 260. But he is heavily favored for a guy that is coming into his first tournament of the year, and it'll be again, he's the best golfer in the world. So
what you're saying is we're picking who's coming in second this week.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think that's probably right. But stay tuned on social media later to see our official picks. But spoiler, I'm not going Scotty. God, I hope somebody does because we can't look that stupid. But it won't be me this week. But no, it'll be a fun. We've got some more names coming in, like we said. Ludwig Oberg is going to be playing this week, his debut on the year. Other big name or like previous winners, like you mentioned, Sepp Straka 25 under. Nick Dunlap was 29 under. He won as an AM here 2 years ago. That was obviously a very, very notable storyline at the time. Some other guys high up on the draft or the odds board, I guess, are Ben Griffin, Ludwig Oberg, Sam Burns, Russell Henley, some of the similar guys that we saw last week, obviously with a couple new names included. And a couple guys I like. I think, like you said, Ludwig, his profile fits really well here. It'll be interesting. Obviously, with the 3 different courses, it's a little tougher to accurately profile how these guys fit.
Right.
But, generally, it's not a lot of penalty off the tee. Distance is rewarded, and you end up seeing a lot of long drives and a lot of wedge play. is kind of where we end up with the Amex across the courses very broadly. Both La Quinta and the Nicklaus course kind of have similar strokes gain profiles where they are pretty well rounded in a fairly uniform test. But Pete Dye Stadium course, which again is the one that is played on Sunday, is heavily favors driving distance over anything else, and also has a little emphasis on around the green play. But it fits Ludwig's profile really well, so I'll be interested to see how he performs. Obviously, first week back, we don't really know. Maybe he's got a little rust like we were talking about, but I think he should be somebody to, obviously, he's the third highest on the odds board, but I think he is somebody that is likely to be up there on Sunday and be in contention here. Just that clean swing, he's going to put the ball 330 down the center of the fairway most of the time. So.
Yeah, I think I like Ben Griffin this week.
Mm-hmm.
I think he played well at the Sony. I think the two stats that I'm looking at are his strokes gained off the tee and around the green. He was third. He ranked third and fourth in those categories respectively. For his approach shots were a bit iffy. I think he had negative 2.7 strokes. I guess strokes lost. And that's largely due to an abysmal -3 strokes in his third round. Other than that, it was not as sharp in like the first. It was more or less average, and I think you can chalk that up to the different wind angles, some of that rust we were talking about. I think it'll play a bit more consistent this week. Obviously, the 3 different courses might make things a little bit difficult, but I think Ben Griffin is a good pick much as anybody.
I think he's been top 10 both the last 2 years as well. So he's somebody who knows this tournament. You might have already said that. I hope I didn't miss that. But he's got some really good course history here, and he knows this tournament very well.
Yeah, it's a safe pick, I think.
Yeah, like you said, I think when we're this early in the season, it's tough to go too far down the leaderboard for the guys you really like, the guys you really think are going to win. Like I'm not going to look too deep. I will throw in a couple quick names that I think are worth watching. Will Zalatoris making his return to the PGA Tour.
That one I'm interested to see.
That'll be really cool. He's at plus 8,000. Obviously, some of that is due to we just don't know what he looks like coming back from injury. There was I should dig it up, but there was a really moving piece about how when he left the course with his injury, he didn't know if he'd played his last PGA Tour event of all time. So it was really serious, and obviously he's been battling back issues for years now. I mean, after he made that incredible debut at the Masters, and a couple years in a row he played really well at some majors. So I was really looking forward to seeing his career develop, and I'm glad he's back. I hope he's performing well. We'll see. The one guy I want to shout out on the off chance that this whole TGL leading to good play, I kind of think Max Homa might be worth a shot.
Yeah.
I know I mentioned it before. His strokes, his profile like fits it. Drives the ball far, good around the greens. And good with his wedges, especially like 50 to 100 yard range, which obviously, again, 3 courses, so I'm not going to go too into detail, but it is rewarded at this tournament. I think it's worth a look, a ponder, but I'm not gonna put all my chips into that basket. I don't even think that's the right expression. I think I just put 2 together, but that's okay. But yeah, it'll be a fun tournament. The Amex is always fun. I mean, look, it's a birdie fest. Guys are going to be around 25 under. But that's fun in its own right. It's not the same test of golf we see week in, week out on the PGA Tour, but it's always fun to watch these guys just show off, just show off how good they are. So
I honestly prefer the birdie fest to like the grueling. I love just like watching them take advantage of all assets of the course and doing things that I could never possibly do.
I remember, when Nick Dunlap, I think he was up 2 on the 18th, and I remember watching that, and he blew his drive so far right because I think there's water left on the 18th, or there's some penalty left if I remember right, and he blew it so far, or there's penalty left, and he blew his drive so far right. But it was intentional because there's no penalty. He was just like, whatever. All I need to do is make a bogey, and then he just figured out a way to like get it on there. And it ended up being a stressful bogey, by the way. If I remember right, he made like a 5-footer up the hill. But it's not a course like you said that's gonna necessarily test your skills to the umpteenth degree. But it is a fun one to watch these guys make a lot of birdies, and I think that totally has its place.
Unless, of course, you hit it into that giant steep bunker.
Yeah, then you're screwed. Then it's over. Then you might as well pack it up, go home.
We'll see who's going to etch themselves into golf history and either make it up or slide down and endear themselves to the hearts of everybody.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, exactly. Should we get into a real quick one of the DP World Tour? What's coming up on the DP World Tour?
Sure, yeah.
Again, they're going out the Hero Dubai Desert Classics this week. We don't need to spend a ton of time on it. Just some of the names that are out there: Rory, Tommy, Shane, again, all out there. Rory McIlroy, Tommy Fleetwood, Shane Lowry, all out there again. Patrick Reed out there. I know. After those comments, we'll see how he plays. Victor Hovland, Tyrrell Hatton, both joined them this week. Other names, I don't want to go too far down the leaderboard here. David Puig, Nikolai Højgaard, Joaquin Niemann, Thomas Dietrich, Ryan Fox, and a couple other notables. But it was funny looking at the course history here, just because it is so aggressively dominated by like the best players in the world, as you might expect. Rory has finished no worse than T4 here in the last 4 years and has 2 wins. Tyrrell Hatton won last year. Victor Hovland won 4 years ago. Those 3 guys hold all 4 of the last wins. So, it'll be fun to monitor, but we're not gonna delve into it the same way we delved into the Amex. But just keep an eye on it, see what's going on out there. It's always fun.
Sweet.
Do we want to get into our final segment? Kyle, do you want to kick us off with any of it?
Yeah, let's do it. So next on tee for us, we will be looking ahead to next week. So we're going to be coming back to you guys on Monday and Wednesday. So on Monday, we'll have an American Express recap. We'll look at our follow-through picks, see how they did, and then we will also be just discussing some of the news of the weekend and seeing how everything shakes up. On Wednesday, we'll have some more news as well. We'll get the LPGA starting. We'll preview the Farmers Insurance Open, and then we will also start looking ahead to the Waste Management Phoenix Open, where we will all be on site, and I know we are all very excited for that.
Very excited. Yeah, it's going to be a blast. We got the opportunity to be there. We will be under the ropes. We will be official-looking gentlemen, speaking with players, speaking with caddies. It'll be really fun. We'll have some good written content coming out that we'll make sure to kind of link to you guys however possible. And we're still working on the schedule. We're trying to figure out the best way to kind of bring that tournament to you guys as we're down there. But there should be some really exciting content. Other reminders, we have our fantasy golf that's all up on our socials, and I'll take this opportunity to shout out our socials. Obviously, you can follow us on Instagram at centercup.pod, and you can follow us on Twitter at centercuppod. And if for some reason you have any suggestions, can't imagine what you'd be suggesting. I think we're doing a fantastic job. Agreed. But if you do have any suggestions, we do have an email at centercup.pod@yahoo.com, so please reach out with anything you might have, suggestions, questions. We are an open book.
Or if you want to just say you love the quarter zip.
Yeah, I mean, Nick comes through here with some absolutely outrageously cool, outrageous complimentary quarter zips, polos. So if you guys are watching on YouTube, keep an eye on those things because they're stealthy, but they're pretty impressive.
Just like to keep you on your toes.
But yeah, stay on the lookout for clips, posts, updates to fantasy golf, updates to our weekly picks every week, and yeah, just check us out on all social media.
We're active. We're there. We're going to keep following the golf season as we get going here and ramping up. And we want to thank everybody for watching and listening to us this week. And we will be back with you next week.
See you on Monday.
See ya.